Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 66 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with the owner of Cohost in Stanwood. Please welcome Kat Olson. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. And as I mentioned on some previous episodes, I'm really trying to start growing the podcast. And so I need your guys' help for that. So if you guys have listened to it and you've enjoyed a specific episode, if you could share that with your friends and family, that'll help me get known by some other local Islanders like yourself. And also, if you have any suggestions for other people to interview on the podcast, or if you have questions just about the area or whatever, you can email me at voice@camanocommons.com. So voice, the word voice, at camanocommons.com. So anyways, I look forward to hearing from you guys. But today, I get to speak with Kat Olson, who started Cohost about a year ago now. And the whole idea behind Cohost was that everybody doesn't necessarily have a big room or a big space where they can have people over, throw a party or teach a class or do any of these type of things. So the idea was that Kat wanted to create a place where she could co-host events for people. So whether that was a birthday party, a yoga class, some educational stuff. So that was the idea that she started with. And like I said, they're located in downtown Stanwood. And then COVID hit this year, which completely threw her world upside down when it came to this business model. So she's had to completely adapt and change what she's doing. So we get into all of that and how she's adapted and how she's pivoted with everything. But we also get into some of the marketing and stuff like that she's been able to do, some of the things that she thinks is the most effective marketing strategy for this area, kind of what she looks at for the future of Cohost. So anyways, without further ado, here's my conversation with Kat Olson. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with the owner of Cohost. Welcome to the podcast, Kat Olson.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about Kat.
Well, you already mentioned that I run Cohost in downtown Stanwood, which has been great. We've been open almost a year. We had our grand opening last September. Yeah,
Congrats.
yeah. Thank you. It's very exciting. But besides that, we moved to Stanwood about 7 years ago. My husband and I, we have 2 kids, Oscar and Nora, who are, they would want me to say, are almost 6 and almost 3 because they're at the tail end. And we bought a 100-year-old farmhouse and have been fixing it up, and that's been great. We've got chickens and cats and are hoping to get a dog when our garage construction finishes. So we're just adding to the menagerie.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We are, last night I was proposed the question of a possible dog purchase. My kids are all on board. My wife is on board. I am the block.
Yes, me too. Me too. Is it dog hair? That's what it is for me.
No, actually, these ones don't shed. They're what type of shepherd? Anatolian shepherd.
They don't shed?
Apparently not.
Okay,
it's a mix.
Okay.
So.
And do you have a breeder in mind?
Yeah, their puppy's already born. They are going to be ready in mid-October, I believe.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that sounds about right.
So, anyways, I'm like, okay, the kids, our oldest daughters are almost 10, and my one of them, they're twins. Oh, okay. One of them wanted a dog since she could know what one was.
That's my daughter.
So she is like, I'm ready. I can take care of it. I can do everything. I'm like,
promises.
Can she? So
yeah. So we Oscar at his preschool. They have a bunch of stick bugs, and so he's been asking for a stick bug, which is just the weirdest request. But I said, if you can take care of a stick bug, then we can maybe move you up to like hamster, and then we can move to like just the leap into getting
Baby
a dog.
steps.
Right, exactly. Well, I was like, he hasn't even fed the chickens in weeks, so I don't know how we're going to do with this thing that needs constant care.
Yeah.
But anyway,
you'll
let me know where you end up on this Anatolian Shepherd, and if it sheds. That's a big one for me.
Yeah. Very cool. So where did you grow up then?
I grew up in Maryland.
Okay.
Where it gets really skinny between Pennsylvania and West Virginia. It's a small town called Hagerstown. We moved there when I was super tiny, and then I lived there until I went to college. I went to school in Connecticut.
Okay.
To Fairfield University. And then from there, it was just a pretty easy train ride to New York. And so I moved to New York right after graduation. So loved the city, even never having really lived in one, like when we were is rural Maryland, so lots of farms and farm stands, and we used to hang out in parking lots. I'm sure people in rural America understand you just hang out in a parking lot. What? It's so weird. But so when I lived in Connecticut, I had an internship in the city and was like, oh gosh, I really want that. So loved it. Living in New York, I lived in Jersey for like a year, and then moved quickly into Brooklyn, and then was in Brooklyn for 10 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, which was really great. I loved it. I always worked in Manhattan. My job was always in Manhattan, and with a variety of commute lengths depending.
Yeah.
But it was so great. I moved to New York in August of 2001, so like 3 weeks before September 11th, which was just nuts.
Wow.
As a 21-year-old new transplant to New York, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But then I can honestly say it was amazing. Post 9/11 was really hectic and chaotic, but it really felt like a community. I think a lot of people have said that, having lived there at that time. And then, we moved here in 2013, so it's a good little while.
Okay. Nice. So when you lived in Maryland then, how many siblings do you have?
I have 2 sisters.
2 sisters.
Yes, and I am the middle.
Okay.
Apparently that's obvious. I don't see it, but I have an older sister, Alicia, who lives in Seattle, and a younger sister, Emily, who is in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So some of you guys ended up over here.
Well, kind of funny. When Christian and I started out here, we were going to kind of come out west and then keep moving east until we found a place we wanted to live. Okay. And I've heard that the summer of 2013 was a banner year for the Pacific Northwest, which is true. We were volunteering on a farm out in Eatonville, and it was just gorgeous. And we're like, why don't we stay here? This is so beautiful. So we bought the house, and then in May told my parents that I was pregnant, going to have a baby, and my parents, who were living in Maryland, said, okay, great, we'll get a house out there. So now my sister's in Seattle. My parents moved last summer full-time to Mount Lake Terrace. Okay. And then we're up here in Stanwood, so now we're just waiting for Emily to ditch Boulder and come out here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then what did you study in college or Fairfield?
Fairfield, yeah. I was an English major with a French minor. My mom is Belgian, so I learned French very young. And so really liked that aspect of it. I was sort of focusing on the writing of English versus the literature side. Which you had to make a choice, and I did. And it was a 4-year program. Fairfield's, great liberal arts school. Mm-hmm. So I really loved that.
Nice. What was your kind of goal with English?
Well, I thought, it was sort of the writing tack of Fairfield. That program is centered kind of a little bit around journalism kind of thing. So as you're, senior stuff, and as you start moving up, then you're writing articles for things and that sort of stuff. And I didn't love the reporting aspect of it. Okay. My internship was at a magazine in New York. It was called MR Magazine. I don't know if it's still around. Menswear retailing. So it was very much on the not on the consumer side of fashion, but more on the industry side. Okay. So I did go to some fashion shows. I got to write some pieces about, sort of flagship stores opening and things like that. But it definitely wasn't like on the scale of a Cosmo or a, GQ or anything like that. But it was great. It was a really big learning experience to understand. When I heard the word editor, I thought an editor was somebody that fixed somebody else's writing, but an editor is somebody that does the writing, things like that. The internship was really helpful for that. So I was hoping to write as a career. When I got the degree, and then quickly realized that you write all the time. I mean, we all write all the time, whether it's a text or it's an email or it's a letter or, you want to write a short story or you're trying to convey something in the written form. I mean, we write all the time. And so even though I didn't publish a book, not writing articles, I feel that the background in writing just in general has helped me be able to communicate things more effectively and efficiently in writing. Right.
And actually my brother-in-law, who now owns the Camano Coffee Roasters.
I've heard of it, yes.
That was that was his background.
Oh yeah, okay. Where did he go to school?
He went to Pensacola Christian in Florida.
Okay, yeah.
And that's where my sister went as well, and that's how they met. Oh. He was I was like, you started with English major and now you're a business owner. It's like, actually, like, I can't, this is one of the best degrees for what I do.
Yeah.
It helped him in so much in like, you know, smoothing out and creating communication.
Yes.
And all of that stuff. Like, it's just, we use English as our language of communication. So, of course.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I think Stephen King is the one that said it, but he talks about how if you want to be a good writer, you've got to be a good reader. Like, you really need to be involved in all the things about it. It's not just like, okay, I need to write a business letter. Where do I put the address and where does the, to whom it concern go? It's more than just the format of it.
Right.
Because those kinds of things, we have now the technology will do it for us.
Yes.
But also, how do you construct a letter where you get across your message and things like that? I thought that English was great. When I first was trying to pick a major, I was thinking about sociology, and my dad was like, that sounds like a really good minor. So,
Yeah. Well, and my wife is definitely much more read than I am as well, but has always been a big emphasis on reading and writing and stuff like that. And for me as a kid, they came more difficult because I wasn't a very good reader as a kid. I have double vision, so like I was always reading, and there was 2 lines and
the words on the page. Yeah,
very difficult to read. So I wasn't a very good reader, and therefore like writing was. I enjoyed actually aspects of writing, like short stories, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the reading hampered that because
Yeah.
my vocabulary, everything was much less. So.
Yeah. And speaking of the difference between reading and writing, when I learned French at a very young age, and then in high school, my mom was like, why don't you take French classes? And I said, okay, sure, no problem. Then she said, you have to take this placement exam to place so that we can place you in the upper level since you already speak French. And I said, okay, great. And I couldn't write it. I could kind of read it because I understood the English alphabet and knew sort of what a sound might be and could kind of piece it together based on whatever, but I couldn't write it at all. I didn't understand that correlation. It came quickly because I already knew how to write and read English, and I knew how the language I was supposed to use, but it was very disorienting to not be able to be able to speak words and to be able to, communicate this way, but not be able to write it or read it. It was odd. It was bizarre.
Yeah. Well, and what I found too was, again, like English and stuff like that was a harder subject for me in school. But when I started learning Spanish, English made more sense.
Oh, yeah.
Because you start learning how they do their sentence structure. And like, oh, that's not how we do it here. And you start looking back at English, you're like, oh, no, we do it differently.
Right.
And so it actually made English make more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even now, you could translate that very easily from, Spanish making sense into all the Romance languages. Like French is the same way the adjective comes after the noun or whatever it is. Things like that. So you can kind of progress on, which is, I think what we're both saying here is that education is important. Stay in school.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. So then after university then, where did you end up kind of cutting your teeth and starting to work?
Yeah, so I moved home after college, and I got my job back at the Red Lobster in town, which is where I had worked all through college. And my mom was like, what are you doing? I said, it's summer. I've got my summer job back. And she said, oh, no, this is the first few months of the rest of your life. You need to go find a real job. And it dawned on me that it wasn't summer anymore. It was life. So I went back to New York, and I had a couple of agencies there, temp agencies, job agency type things that were looking for work. And I got a job at a small tourism company that needed someone who spoke French. And at the time, I spoke a lot more Italian than I do now, so that was helpful also. But so I got a job there, and within, they said, can you start in a week? And I said, well, I have to give 2 weeks notice at my other job, which I'm sure the restaurant would have just been like, where is she? She never showed up for her shift today, because I could have probably bounced, but I was being responsible. So yeah, I worked at Villas and Apartments Abroad, which I don't know if it's still around. I have to look it up. But I worked there for a little over a year. September 11th was kind of tricky with the travel industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Similar to probably now in a different way.
Yes, exactly. All these tragedies and traumas and, oh my gosh, life.
Yes. Yeah, I guess they get hit the hardest on these like big time event type things.
Yeah. It's kind of how you mark your life. Where were you when Kennedy was shot kind of thing. Like, where were you on September 11th? We've got these. Where were you during COVID? At home.
Yeah. That one will at least be easy.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So you were there. Where'd you go from there then?
Oh gosh. Okay. So my resume in New York is a little bit well, it's long, frankly. I've had to edit it out so it fits on one page. I kind of bounced around a little bit. I went from the Villa place to a pharmaceutical company, which had its office in downtown, and then moved to New Jersey when they realized, like, oh gosh, real estate in New York is really expensive. So I was there. It was a French company, Sanofi, which is now Sanofi Aventis, which I think is back to Sanofi. I don't know. And then I, through that temp agency, got a job at Goldman Sachs. So it was all the way up on the top floor there, which was intense. And
Wow.
most of these jobs was as an executive assistant.
Okay.
So an executive assistant is kind of like a I was going to say VP because not within the company, but to the person you're assisting.
Right.
So, I would handle travel arrangements, travel management, figuring out the calendar, the meeting schedules. I definitely got a lot of lunches. Never got the dry cleaning, but sometimes I booked babysitters. Sometimes I, picked Christmas trees. One time I had to select a banister for his home remodel. But
Wow.
yeah, it was, and I really liked it. I like
Yeah.
the event planning side of it, quote unquote, like the event of this person's life, making sure that they understand what time things are supposed to happen, where they're supposed to be at any given time, if they need to get there, how to get them there, things like that. So I was an executive assistant most of the time. Most of my jobs were doing that, all the way up until we moved out here when I was at a hedge fund, where I was an executive assistant. I was there for 5 years, I think. And that was really exciting and great. I loved that job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had to run all the background, making sure that the person you were working for was able to get on time, to do all their things that they're supposed to do. But I'm assuming being in that world and stuff, was that something that you were, like, were you, during that time period, were you interested in, were you watching markets and things like that a lot more? Or were you...
Not even a little bit. Nope. Nope. It was so funny because there was a big, confidentiality thing, obviously, because a lot of big things are happening.
Right.
Tiger Global is a very big hedge fund. But I didn't pay attention to it. Frankly, I didn't have time, and it wasn't interesting to me. So for me to grab a fax off the machine, which is dating me a little bit, but or receive an email that had confidential information, I wouldn't even have known what to do with it. Frankly, it was more my concern to make sure that his proposal to his now wife would go off without a hitch, and making sure that the lunch would arrive on time, things like that. And it was great. It was a job that of the jobs that I've had, that was the one that I probably took home the most.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like a shift work thing where the job ends.
Right.
When I leave, he's still living in somewhere and could be in the wrong place and could need a ride and could whatever. So a little bit of Devil Wears Prada kind of vibe, but it was fun.
Okay. And were you married during that time then?
I was not, no.
Okay.
We got married in 2012. We met in 2010, got married in 2012, and then came out here shortly after.
Okay. Cool. So then was it basically...
Love at first sight? No, I'm just kidding. This isn't a dating podcast? Okay.
Well, was it something that, you realized, once I have a family and everything, I won't be able to continue this? Or did you kind of did you move on before or after getting married?
Yeah, Christian worked for an ad agency, worked for a number of big ones in the city, and really liked it. But we both had been in New York for so long, and it just is very congested. You always see tons of people. I used to see more people on my walk to the subway than I see on a daily basis now, COVID or no COVID. I'm on a subway train with 75 people, in my car there.
Yeah.
It's just a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And we knew that we wanted to live closer to family. His family's all in Omaha, Nebraska, and my family at that time was really spread out. And so it felt like, let's give it a try. I owned my apartment in Brooklyn at the time. And so we could do a 3-year in, 2-year out thing. So I lived there for 3 years. So we rented it for 2 years and said, well, let's give it 2 years. If we hate the rest of the world, then we'll come back.
Yeah.
But if we decide to move somewhere else, then we'll just sell the apartment. And that's what ended up happening. We kind of roamed around, realized, you can garden on more than a windowsill. Oh, let's do that. We can have a couple chickens and eat the eggs and be, more sustainable and things like that. So we decided to give it a try, and then the try worked, I guess.
Very cool. So then you were talking about you were over in East, what part of
Eatonville.
Washington? Eatonville.
Yeah, on the way to Mount Rainier. It's this little, sort of logging town. When we decided to leave New York, we got married at a farm upstate New York, and it was just beautiful. They did a great job with the gardens, obviously, if it's a wedding venue, right? But it was beautiful. We loved it. And so I called my sister and said, oh my gosh, I've got this great idea. Do you know what we're going to do? We're going to find a farm that's willing to take us on under their wing, and we will volunteer there. And she goes, it's called Woofing. I'll send you the website. And so I said, oh, okay. So it's WWOOF. And it's Worldwide Organization of Organic Farmers, or Willing Workers on Organic Farms, depending on where you look. But so basically, you can volunteer as a farm to be a host farm, and then you can get volunteers to help you.
Okay.
So you could, if you are a lettuce farmer, if you're a goat farmer, if you're a, even a home builder kind of thing, you can get these volunteers that come from all over the world. And if you look on the WOOF website, you could go to Thailand, you could go to Japan, you could go to Southeast Asia, or, I guess all these peoples. But we decided on Washington.
Okay.
Because my sister living in Seattle, we decided we'd kind of drive cross country, start here, and then, like I said, keep moving east. But the farm in Eatonville is called Mountain Lodge Farm. They make delicious, delicious cheese. And we were there from June through December of 2013. And I'd like to say that we made any of the cheese, but we didn't. It was made by a fabulous, at the time, it was made by a fabulous cheesemaker named Megan McKenna, who is still making cheese and doing wonderful things. But so we worked there as goat milkers.
Okay.
I helped clean the creamery. So much cleaning involved in cheese making. So much. And, hung out, met other people that were local, and fell in love with Washington State, and it was just great.
Yeah. So how was that as a change from what you got? You both guys came out of like high octane, high adrenaline jobs to farming. How was that transition, and how was that?
Yeah. Well, we had to pack up the whole apartment and put it in storage. So we basically only brought what we would have considered at that time to be our outdoor clothes, which was a lot of puffy jackets and black pants. And, so we had to definitely revamp the wardrobe to be a little more farm friendly. But it was great. We hadn't worked with our hands in that way in a long time. We both got carpal tunnel immediately. And we lived in the barn, so there was a little upstairs apartment in the barn. It was a beautiful farm, and you can still visit it, I think. They have farm weekends. But so we were up in the eaves of the barn, and the goats were all below us, and it was, we were used to living in small spaces, so that was helpful, having a little apartment. But it was great. We were, newly married. We were in this new area. We were doing completely different things all day long. Sometimes he'd be fixing a fence, and I'd be trimming hooves or whatever. It was just completely different.
Yeah.
And I think when we were thinking about leaving New York, it was sort of like, well, where do we go? And we have our own personal opinions about the other cities in America. Boston is too small and low-lying, and Chicago is a little too much this, and then, Atlanta is this, and, you can go all the way down to LA if you really want to. But so when we were driving cross country and looking, so we got out a bottle of wine and a map and said, well, where would you want to move? And we both just stared at each other. We were like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Right.
And so we said, let's try something completely new and different, and not trying to recreate what we had in New York. I like to say that we were looking for a change and we found it.
Yes. Okay. Very cool. So how long were you guys living there then?
So we were in Eatonville for 6 months. We spent, I'd say, a good 2 months of that looking for property. Okay. And Eatonville is way down Pierce County, so we were looking in that area, and our real estate agent kept saying, "No, you want the Skagit Valley. So let me know when you want to go to the Skagit Valley." So we did. We finally came up here, and we saw our house in Stanwood and a couple others all the way up to Cedro. Okay. And we just loved the house. We placed an offer on our drive home. It was nice. Yeah, we loved the area.
Very cool. So then once you guys moved here, you guys had moved from the farm? Was it from the farm directly?
Yep, from the farm directly. Yep.
So then what was kind of your plan upon moving here and getting set up and everything?
Yeah, well, we spent 2 months in a drafty old house with no furniture because we didn't have our stuff from New York yet. But then we got that. We had to do some repairs on the house that were kind of not exciting. The lifting of the house because it was sinking, those kinds of things. Yeah, I know. It's money that you don't see, which is annoying, but we definitely feel it. So we did a lot of house repairs and that sort of thing. And then we were in the house a year and had Oscar. Okay. And then Christian went to Microsoft and worked there for a while, and then the commute was just brutal.
That is really long.
Brutal, yeah. So that was no fun. But when I was pregnant with Oscar, I worked at Garden Treasures Farm in Arlington. Okay. And so we just kind of started feeling things out in the area.
Yeah. So then when did you decide to start up with Cohost then?
So Cohost kind of came about as an idea. Christian does some motion graphics work still, ad agency type stuff remotely, and he needed an office space because we live I don't know where you live if you're on the island, but I've heard the internet out here is not always ideal.
Yeah, growing up here, it was terrible.
Yeah. So we live in the country also, so we have satellite internet, and it's terrible.
Oh, no.
And so for him to edit something with horrible internet
Right.
is just like days, especially uploading whatever. So we wanted to look for a space where he could have an office, and then just more the idea percolated of, okay, well, you need basically a half bath of room for your computer and your chair, and you sit and you type.
Yep.
But there's this beautiful space on Main Street, and what if we? And so we just sort of got the idea together to do something that would be community-based, where we could have people in, we could invite people to events, have them plan their own events in the space, that kind of thing. So the idea just sort of started evolving from the idea of creating a community space.
Okay. So for those of you, for those of our listeners who don't know, how would you describe Cohost?
So it's funny because September 2020, I'm describing it a little differently than September 2019. But it's a community-based event space. So we used to co-host a full calendar of events with local instructors. So we would have a local flower designer come and do a design class, or we had Deanna from Twig and Vine Farm do a dahlia tuber class, so figuring out how to split them, that sort of thing. We've had a bunch of local artists and makers come in and do classes on photography and on, now of course, we had a yoga instructor who came in twice a week. So we did yoga, so we just pushed everything to the sides and had a little studio there. So we did a variety of things, invitation-wise for events. And then we were also a venue for whatever event you might want to hold. So we did, surprisingly, we did a lot of first birthday parties. You've got a few kids, so I'm sure you remember the first birthday party as the one that like the grandparents come to and the aunts and uncles, and there's usually not a lot of other kids. And so I think that was kind of the dynamic. People were like, oh, we need a nice place to actually like sit and have a meal. Yeah. Where once you get to like the third, fourth kid, and also they're older, you're like, backyard, we want to be able to hose it off. No, we're not going inside. Right. So it was nice that the sort of events portion, which would be like on a, Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of thing, was able to sustain the business while we did some of these smaller classes and kids things. And we did preschool once a month. We did cupcake decorating workshops. Wow. We had a full calendar of stuff. Okay. So when people ask me now what we do, because we're not allowed to do any of that, we have a capacity of 5. Okay. A limit of 5. And I think that, it's brutal. I think that stems out of the idea that we're not a retail space, so you don't have the turnover that would be inherent in like a Lowe's or a Target where they're at half capacity. And I'm not sure what yours is.
Yeah, we're considered, we can have half capacity.
Yeah, so half capacity. Yep. And the capacity of a 2,000 square foot space is hundreds, which is what we have. So if we were able to have half capacity, it would be tricky to navigate the 6 foot distance and all that stuff. So I understand it, but being able to have only 5 people, that's me plus 4. So we had to do some, I won't even call it math because it was just like, all right, fine, we'll see what we can do. But we are operating now during the day as a co-working space. Okay. So we have a couple shifts. I call it from 8 to noon or noon to 4, and you basically book it for you get a big table, you get Wi-Fi and printing capabilities, and just sort of nice, quiet area to work. And we're trying that. We can't have more than a few people, so we can't really do events. Yeah. But we do have a Thursday evening happy hour, so you can book the space for that. Okay. And then come, bring your friends. We've done movie nights, things like that. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
How has the co-working been going?
It's been going okay. We are currently recording in Huddle, which is a co-working space. And you have customers here. So there's one difference. It's been fine. When we first looked at doing Cohost back, a year ago, that was kind of the challenge, is that we didn't know what to do with the space during the day. We didn't want to be sitting on Main Street having evening and weekend events with our doors closed. Right. So our initial idea was, let's do co-working during the day and let's do events at night. The trick with co-working is that for it to be a more sustainable place, you need private areas. You need an area where you can record a podcast. You need an area where you can take a phone call, things like that. And we don't own the building. We can't create walls. Okay. If we do create walls, we have to upgrade the bathroom, which we don't want to do. So we kind of just created these individual spaces, which for
Okay.
the average person doing the average work, you can still take a Zoom call. You can have your headphones
Yep.
on if you want to, watch a video or something like that. It still works.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's necessarily the market in Cohost or in Stanwood to sustain it as a co-working space permanently.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting in co-working spaces, and it's something that we've been trying to figure out as well, is I think there was this like almost boom of co-working spaces because everyone saw WeWork and was like, we can do what they do. Well, they've kind of fell apart, especially with COVID. But even before
Sure.
that, there were some things coming out that like they weren't doing as well as they said, and all of that stuff. And then so we were kind of looking, well, and that, my thought was with that is that they went so far. Like it was a gym and coffee shop. It was like
Right.
everything in one,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot to sustain financially.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like, how do you miniaturize that for the small town?
Right.
And I do think co-working works on the small scale level.
Mm-hmm.
On the large scale, it probably can, but it does make it a lot harder to.
Yeah.
There's a lot more managing pieces to that.
Yeah, and the trick for us was when we were initially talking about it, describing co-working to somebody who just has no familiarity with it,
Right.
it's very much like, oh, I think my niece does that. Like there's no
Yep.
there's no scope for it. So since COVID and everybody's working from home, it's basically that's a little bit easier to describe. But
Yeah.
for a while we were saying, you can use Cohost kind of like a Starbucks without the coffee, or
Right.
like where you can have a space, and then or how you can go to the library and use your laptop, but then when you're using your laptop at the library and you have to take a call or go outside, you're staring in the window at your laptop,
Yeah.
make sure nobody's messing
Right.
around with it. Like it's
Right.
not a secure space.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of, it's not just a, sort of got it, understand what I'm looking at kind
Right.
of thing. So social media has been great for that, to be able to
Yeah.
post pictures of what it is. Oh, that's how you use that. Oh, that's what that is. And that's been kind of exciting to at least be able to communicate that, this is kind of what's happening, what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The trick with social media, as I'm sure you know, and have been experiencing business-wise, is that you can post something that nobody ever even sees,
Right.
because their feeds are so full. So we have, we've done a couple classes, virtual classes since, March. And it's, you're kind of pounding the pavement saying like, here's this thing coming up, because there's only so many avenues to advertise if people
Right.
aren't around. And you still get the, oh, shoot, when did that happen? When was that? And it's like, oh my gosh, I couldn't have promoted it more, but it feels like, you feel like you're just screaming from the rooftops,
Right.
but it's very hard. Social
Yeah.
media is great because if you see it, you're very well aware,
Yeah.
but it's so easy to miss.
Yeah. Well, and I've talked to other people on the podcast as well about this, and Stanwood Camano area in some ways is almost just like it's back in time like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so the benefit to that is if you're up to date on marketing,
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of be like, okay, 5 years from now, I can use this strategy and it will work here. But what's interesting is like when you're trying to do these Facebook ads and marketing and stuff like that, a lot of times you're just getting crickets and you're like,
Right.
I put so much time and energy into these posts and like
Right.
no one's responding, and then people walk in and they're like, how long has this been here?
I know. We get that all the time because we're in the old Pinch Knitters space, which is
Okay.
a yarn store.
Yeah.
And we initially had, some yarn artwork up in the window, and people would come in going, where's all the yarn? I'm like, oh my God, she's been gone for 6 months. So it felt very, it felt like we were announcing it and couldn't stop, but then
Yeah.
it was still, kind of coming back to just getting the word out. And honestly, I hear about everything that's going on anywhere ever from my friend Connie. So if you know Connie, she'll tell you everything that's going on, but it's a very big word of mouth town.
Yes.
If somebody hears something and they like it and they love it and they share it with their friends at barbecues or wherever,
Yep.
or on social media, sure, but it really is a big word of mouth town.
It is.
So we were very much looking forward to this summer being the same as it has always been, which it was not. But because that's where you get it.
Yeah.
You get people that walk by. You get people. Glass Quest was great for us. I don't know
Yeah.
if you even remember that. It was so long ago.
It
but
was a great glass quest. It's like people
Yeah.
knew it was going to be terrible.
I know. They were like, let's lick everything while we can. But it was wonderful because we had, a couple of the days we had 150 to 200 people through our door. And
Wow.
on an average walk by downtown,
Right.
Stanwood Day, we're getting a handful, maybe.
Yeah.
So to get a couple hundred in there coming in and being excited about, oh, here's this new thing, which, I wouldn't have said we were new, but fine, new to them, kind of thing. But it was great because they'd come in, they'd ask questions, they'd actually spend some time in the space. Oh, gosh, this is nice. Oh, what about this birthday party?
Yeah.
It was a really great time. So we got the word out then a little bit. I think we kind of built a little bit of momentum that I'm trying to keep going while we're figuring this out. And hopefully, we'll come out the other side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So this has been, I mean, that's a massive amount of changes and pivoting that you have to do in 1 year.
Yeah. And it's funny because, we've gotten some suggestions from people on what we could do with the space. And some of them are just like asking a restaurant to become a nail salon, where it's like, yes, I could build all these walls. I could upgrade these things or whatever. But at a certain point, it's like in 4 months, is everything back to normal? And now I've done this whole other thing that I never really had an interest in to, come back to that. So,
right.
We're kind of treading water a little bit. We're hopeful. And, I think community support's been great so far. So we're just hoping it stays.
Yeah. No, and I think that is something that the Stanwood Camano area has really proven during COVID.
Yeah.
It is very for its local businesses in this area. And it's also very much supporting of the businesses and the community here.
Yeah, and I feel like further to that is that, we do have chains here in Stanwood, but really you got to go to Smoky Point or Mount Vernon to get to any of the big box places.
Yeah.
And I think that with the virus, it's kind of brought down the level of like, okay, I need a new pair of shoes. Okay, well, I'm not going to go to the outlet malls. What does the country store have?
Right.
And like you can genuinely find a lot of the things that you would need. You might need to go to 3 stores. But you're supporting local. It's
right.
probably going to be even sometimes a little bit cheaper or easier to get. The businesses appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
And I think that that's been able to hit home a little easier here
right.
Than maybe in other areas.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, we've been very blessed with how we've been able to like have July and August have been really good for us.
That's great.
And it's really just the community support and just that continued that they're supporting us, because I've seen the reports, I've read the news, articles, and retail across the country is way down. Yeah. Everything is just way down in so many different things, everything that we are, and yet we're matching pace with last year on certain months. And so
awesome.
It's just incredible like that we're getting this type of support, and we just really thank the community for that. So it's,
Yeah, and it's the community showing up, but it's also you showing up because, you could have half the stock, you could have half of the, your staff, you could be producing half the amount of pastries and serving half the amount of ice cream and, not have so many sweatshirts or whatever it is. But then, I remember the feeling of going to Target and having the shelves be half empty, whether it's cleaning products or whatever, especially in March and April, and just feeling so sad and depressed and not understanding what was happening in the world and really seeing it was very scary. I was just in the marketplace down there, and it is, you're doing great business. There's tons of stuff on the shelves. Everybody in there is happy, and we're all wearing masks, but that's genuinely the only difference.
Yeah.
And so you showing up and you presenting this thing for people to use and having a positive vibe about it and not a, sort of eye roll towards this new thing that we all have to live through and it's so bad. Because, we are. We are living through it. So, kudos to you, too, for presenting something that the public wants and needs.
Thanks. Yeah. And no, I think it's definitely been, we officially took over the business, my wife and I, in November of last year. So it's been an interesting first year for us, too.
Exactly. Happy almost anniversary.
I know. You as well.
Thanks.
But I think right before everything officially stopped, we were able to have one of the chamber breakfast meetings. We were just trying that out for the first time over at your guys'
Yes,
place.
I didn't jinx it. I won't say that I jinxed it. But yes, I thought about that because, we had breakfast pastries and we had a yogurt bar and we had all kinds of fun stuff, which was so great. And COVID had just kind of hit our wavelengths. And so I was very nervous, like, oh my gosh, are people not going to eat the food because it's been touched by whatever? No problem. Those Stanwood cupcakes went lickety-split. Everybody loved them. But that was the last time we had, an event at Cohost and the first time I met you.
Wow. Yeah. So just because you're in that area as well, how has the rest of downtown Stanwood, I'm sure you talked to some of those owners, some of their businesses, how have they been coping and doing with everything? Yeah,
I think it's been a little bit challenging for everybody. I think the retail stores that I've chatted with, basically anybody that sells something that can be taken away, figured out as fast as they could how they could maintain that during the closure. Yeah. So, some of the clothing stores, cupcakes, bars, restaurants, that sort of thing, they were just like, great, we're doing takeout. We need to revamp our website or whatever it is. So further to that marketing piece, it's like, if you don't know that Ladders Clothing is still open, you know, then you need to, figure it out. So Yvonne's been doing an amazing job. She was selling online throughout the whole thing, and then she threw her door open on June 1st. So excited to reopen.
Nice.
And cupcakes too, and the Tea Gal. Everybody's just been full force. I think there was a genuine hit when we had to be closed. March, April, May was really tumbleweeds down Main Street.
Right.
That was hard.
Yeah.
But I think in the spirit of trying to make the most of it, and now we're out of it, and let's figure it out, I think, sort of the vibe has come back up. The farmer's market is always, nice to have too down there.
Yeah, well, and that's been something here at the Commons, that the farmer's market has been such a, we don't, I guess you don't realize how much you want to get out and like see people and all this stuff. And because every other type of event is canceled right now, farmers markets are allowed to still be going. It was so weird the first time we had our opening market here. I saw the tents out there. I saw some people wandering about, and I was like, I didn't realize how much I missed just having energy. In the center courtyard. Yeah,
and just seeing people, interacting and moving around and not feeling as encumbered as you do inside. I really think that. Our community at large, we've got a little bit of a smoke situation right now, but I think our community is an outdoorsy community. Main Street is not covered. It's not a strip mall, or not a traditional mall. It's outside. You have to be outside in the elements. Farmers markets are like that too. And I think everybody here moved here because they like sort of outdoorsy type things, even if it's just being outside. So the farmers markets, I'm glad that they were able to come back. I'm a little bit nervous about the weather not being great in the next few months and sort of what that's going to do. But
yeah, and that's definitely my biggest concern moving into, I was really, I think, hopeful, I would say, beginning of summer that, we would probably, and we were blowing through the phase. We were phase 1, phase 2. And then it slowed, and then it just, stopped. And I was like, well, if we don't get to phase 4 by end of summer, there's no way we're getting there. At least until next year. And then certain counties, I know Snohomish is a little bit behind. I think they're in phase 2 still.
Yep, we are.
But there's still counties across the state that are in phase 1 or 1.5, and then so this whole time you guys have been stuck, and it's just really difficult for, I can't imagine for the businesses that are in those counties. And I know Stanwood kind of gets a bad, the short end of the stick there, because they're a small town, but they're linked to a large city. So
Well, with different rules. So where we have restaurants that you can't necessarily go into in the same way or the same capacity or the same whatever, it's a 10-minute drive to a different restaurant on Camano where it is open, which is great for, everybody who wants to go and eat and the restaurants on Camano, but it does, if it's takeout versus sit-in and that kind of thing, it can make it a little bit tricky. One of the things that you're asking about folks on Main Street, we've had a lot of conversations about the community support ebbing and flowing, when it was initially, when everybody was panicky and everybody's sitting at home, there was not, we didn't know what to do. And then it was like, okay, go to local businesses, buy what they have and do that. Okay, great. And then there was sort of a sense on June 1st, I think, that, okay, everything's opened up. Oh, good, they made it. And so the current fear from business owners that we were talking about a little bit more is the idea that we haven't made it, we are not out of the woods here. Our door is open. We're really trying, the loans are hopefully for a lot of people helping out and that sort of thing, but the economic impact is going to be widespread and lengthy. So, the more we can sort of get off Amazon and stay out of Target, my favorite store of all time, love Target. But, if there are things that you can get locally, I think that will help for a long time.
And I think that is something, I'm watching a lot of the, not watching the actual proceedings of the congressional hearing because I think I would
fall asleep.
But there's some updates that I follow, some people that do updates, and just the widespread of unemployment and people that aren't getting paychecks and all these different things that are lining up, those all have an effect. They affect business, they affect the families, they affect. There's just people that are trying to pay bill, just try and stay in their home right now. And so we are so far from out of it. I think we're oh, great, we're in this phase, which means we're basically there. But it's still a very long road, and I think even us, we're we had a good summer, but then what's the fall going to bring? If we have another spike, then that could close us down again, and that would be devastating. So It's really just continue to support local, really see how each businesses can help each other. And
And I don't need everything that everybody sells all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't always need those things, but the social media aspect of it, the word of mouth aspect is free, so I really encourage people, if you did get a great cupcake at Stanwood Cupcakes, which all of our cupcakes are delicious, so that's easy to do, make a post about it, tell your neighbor, say, hey, the next cake you need, why don't you go over there? Anything that can be done to say, I enjoyed this thing locally. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
The Facebook groups, there's Stanwood Camano community page, things like that. Those Facebook groups have been great.
Yeah.
Because it's an easy place to see what's going on, see who's doing what,
right.
and learn about new things. And then, you might not need this thing every day, but the next time you do, you'll know where to go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Well, sounds like you've had a very interesting year. And,
I think we all have, sure.
But I'm glad you guys are been able to pivot to some degree, and I hope that really starts picking up.
Same here.
I do think as parents really settle into the fact that their kids are in their house and home, I think they will be looking for additional places to work.
Yeah.
And like you guys have this great, by having those quadrants where you can come for a certain time of day, I think that's a great aspect as well, because we do more of like a whole, like just you like buy the whole package, like and I think if someone just needs like that short, certain period of time, like my kids are supposed to be in class during this time, so that's when I can sneak away and do these. Or even bring the kids. We're trying to figure out a way to be able to homeschool in our space. Because we had a family come in the other day that they tried to go to the coffee shop and it was closing. They tried to go here, but the Wi-Fi wasn't working. There's no option to go to the library. Starbucks, you can't sit in. And, these kids needed to do their lesson, and they were just kind of driving around. She popped her head in and said, can we come in? And I said, absolutely. And so the idea we need to figure out how to do it where one family of kids is not distracting the next family of kids. That's really the only barrier. Portioned off so that they're not
so they can't interact, so that it's just a little bit more private, because I know for me, I'm cleaning off the dining room table, and then I'm putting everything back, and then putting everything out, and that kind of thing. And we just have these big, wide open spaces, plenty of chairs, plenty of room. So if we can figure out a way to do it safely, in smaller blocks, be able to clean and disinfect in between, I think we'd be able to help the community with the homeschooling too, because God knows, it's a whole new thing.
No, it is. And I think the other thing is that all of this with the school system and everything, I mean, across the country, it's really pointing out the deficiencies in internet equality.
Yeah, big time.
People just not, having satellite internet.
Well, even the difference between home and co-host. Even for me, and I don't mean that in any way except to say that, I don't have any more options at home.
Right.
We have exhausted all of them. There is not another way to do it.
Right.
We just have crappy internet.
Yeah, and it's not even a money. Like I've talked to people who are like, I told Wave, I will pay for you to put the line down.
Yes, same.
Just get us internet.
I said, do we need to get we can sign a petition, whatever they want. All of our neighbors are fists in the air. We can't get good internet. It's terrible.
Yeah. No, so it's just mind-boggling that's like in the 21st century, like in 2020, this is what we're still seeing. And with the internet being as powerful and an equalizer as it is, not having access, it's like not having access to food and water at this point. It's like a very vital part to society. So I think if there's any way to get that homeschooling,
we're working
be able
on
to run
it.
classrooms.
We're working on it.
Very cool. All right. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions. So the first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most in the last 3 months?
Okay. So I do love things. I like cool cups and shoes and clothes and stuff like that. But Rainbow Eats caterer in the area. I don't know if you know Courtney Bowersaw. She's wonderful. But she was doing frontline meals during the initial crisis. And so you would buy a pan of fajitas from her, and she would also donate one to the frontline with the hospitals down in Everett. And so I participated in that, buying a $30 tray of fajitas and then let her do one. And these fajitas, okay, first of all, they're delicious, but it's a huge portion. And now she's doing those meals. She's no longer donating because there doesn't seem to be as critical of a need for that. But she is doing the catered meals, and we do it every other week.
Okay.
So every other Wednesday. Today is my Wednesday.
Nice.
I'm so excited. But she has a little menu that she puts out. It's 4 or 5 items, and you can pick which ones you want. She delivers it to your house.
Wow.
So she brings it to you straight out of her cooler and into your fridge. And we've had pastas, we've had salads, if I order a pasta and a salad in the same week, if I'm feeling a little not like cooking, I can get basically through Sunday. Like
Wow.
it's so much food and it's so great. And it's a little bit of a stress relief for me.
Yes.
Knowing where my meal, like dinner is done.
Yeah.
Dinner is done tonight.
Yep.
So yeah, and it's very reasonably priced and delicious. So
Awesome.
that'd be my favorite.
Very cool. All right. Pretend you have a friend coming from out of town. What would their first day look like here?
Well, first of all, I'd have to give them directions to my house, which could take a while. I feel like everybody gets a little lost when they're driving through the country. But we'd probably hit downtown because all those little shoppies are so great. I always go, that's my first stop on Shop Small Saturday, after Thanksgiving. You do the Black Friday elsewhere, but then come down Saturday.
Yeah.
So we'd probably do this, and then we'd go to the other end of town because that's just amazing. Do you know Bryn? She just opened Vita Verde Home.
Oh, yes. So we have their products in the marketplace.
Yeah, so you have some of her candles there too.
Yeah.
But she has just so much stuff. I was there the other day with my sister and bought some really lovely earrings. I bought a soap dish that was just gorgeous. I bought some face stuff. It was so fun. So that end of town is also so great.
I need to stop by there.
Yes, you must. I think she's open Wednesday through Saturday.
Okay.
And then we'd probably go for sushi, because I love Shima. Have you been to Shima?
Yes.
Delicious. And then, I don't know, we usually just drive around at least for a little bit with people. We just kind of orient, and then people are like, is this an island? It looks like land. And I'm like, oh, it is an island. Don't worry. And it's a whole different county. Kind of do the whole tour.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Who is an interesting or fascinating person in this community that I should interview next?
Kate Songhurst
Okay.
of Happy Hollow Farm. It's right up the block from me. I live just up the hill from Sylvana, so she's just a little bit further up the hill there. They opened over the summer as an event and wedding venue, flower farm, whole deal.
Okay.
We're getting to the end of flower season, so I know she's got a couple more tours going where you can go and pick your own flowers, that kind of thing. But it is meant to be a venue for things. So if you want, I think they're going to do a Super Bowl party. They're doing definitely weddings and events coming up. It's gorgeous. She has a big lawn, outside space kind of thing. I'm an event space too, so I guess I should be promoting that aspect of it, but we're inside, and right now it's just not going to happen. Yeah. Come spring and summer next year, we'll see. But in the meantime, she's got this gorgeous barn. Her lawn is beautiful, tons of great flowers, just lovely.
Nice.
Yeah, so she's at Happy Hollow Farm on Instagram.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. And lastly, if you could have a message on a billboard, I always say on Camano Island, but it could be right as you're driving into Stanwood as well. What would that say?
It would say, vote on November 3rd.
All right. Everyone get out there.
Yes, and I know we're a mail-in state, so you were waiting for your ballots, but I just went on the website today just to reconfirm what I thought my suspicion was true, which is that if you don't get your mail-in ballot, you can print one online.
Okay.
So if you feel like it's been too long or you're not sure what the Postal Service is up to, that kind of thing, you can print one. So it's votewa.gov.
Votewa.gov.
Yeah.
All right. We'll have that link in the show notes.
Good.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me on
Oh
the
my
podcast
gosh, this was so
today.
fun, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
All right. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Kat Olson for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/EP66. That's CamanoCommons.com/EP66. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.